Okay, welcome to Another Dooley Noted Podcast presented by Titan MRI and ABC Fine Wine and Spirits. Appreciate everybody for clicking on or for listening on one of the many places you can do it, whether it's on, of course, WRUF is carrying it, the podcast, not live, but they're doing it. Obviously, you can listen to it there. I don't know why I'm stumbling over these words. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, all these 39 different platforms. Remember to like, follow, and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And I was going to start out today by talking. We got a couple of great guests for you. Jason Odom's going to join us in just a little bit. Gator great, one of the great Gators of all time, and of course a great Tampa Bay Buck, so we'll talk to him about both. And then Rece Davis, you know him well from Game Day. He's going to join us a little bit later. We'll get to three things. We have a brand new sponsor that we're going to talk about with a new segment that's going to be really cool, and I'm looking forward to that. We'll save that for the end. But I wanted to start out by talking about the passing of Henry Aaron, who, of course, just passed away today at the age of 86, Tuesday. What is today? Friday, sorry. Certainly not a happy moment. It made me really sad. It was literally like I just said no, into my phone when I was looking at it when it moved. Hank Aaron, whoever you wanted to call him, was a hero of mine, man. When I was a kid growing up, I loved him. That's the first thing I really got connected to when I was young, was we could get the Braves games, and Milo Hamilton and Ernie Johnson, and Henry Aaron became just a huge hero of mine. I remember being in junior college when he hit the homer to break Babe Ruth's record, and I remember all the terrible things he went through, all the prejudice that went on. It was really bad, and his kids were basically prisoners in their own house because of the death threats. Terrible part of our history, to be honest with you. But what he did and was able to overcome that, and to me, he'll always be, well, not always, somebody could still break his record. Somebody who didn't use steroids or cheat. I will consider right now Henry Aaron to be the all-time home run champ. I just remember Milo's call. I remember Vin Scully's call in the game. And I just remember, I remember the day, it was a day game when he tied the record. I think it was the first game of the season. And I was in junior college, and for some reason the game was on TV, which they weren't even on that much back in the 74, 73, whatever that was. I'm trying to not say it too loud so you don't know how old I am. I think you guys have already figured that out. But that was a huge deal, just tying the record. We all knew it was coming. It was just a matter of time. And he felt a lot of pressure, a lot of people. And think about this, if you will. When Hank Aaron, and everybody's seen this video before, when he hits a home run and he's rounding the bases and he gets around second and goes towards third, there's two kids run out in the field and start patting him on the back. It's unbelievable to think that happened. And here's a guy with death threats, and people are coming on the field. It was just wild and crazy, but he was a great one. And I tell you what, everybody remembers him for hitting, I think, 755, I think was the final number that he hit. But he also, like, the numbers are ridiculous for hits as in a career, for RBI in a career, for extra base hits in a career. He was one of, literally, in my opinion, one of the 5 best players of all time. But that's me. What do I know? Anyway, rest in peace, Hammer and Hank, man. The home run king. It's a sad day for me as a result. I did want to talk a little bit about the Florida basketball win on Tuesday night, but I mean, it's so crazy. This is what we're dealing with in this season. It's just going to be weird. I mean, think about this. When you think about Florida's game against Kentucky and how bad Kentucky destroyed Florida and how bad Florida was in that game and how good Kentucky was, and since then, Kentucky now all of a sudden can't beat anybody. I watched that game Wednesday night, obviously, when they lost to Georgia at the buzzer. And, of course, Florida plays Georgia next. So we'll see how they go there. I do want to get to the whole situation in Tennessee with Danny White taking over. I was a little bit nervous that they would hire him because I think he's a sharp guy. Of course, we've got the Leonardo's, Millhoppers. Quick picks coming up. We got some NFL for you and the Florida-Georgia game. But right now, we are going to talk to one of the great legend, I call him, of all time, whether it's the Gators or the Bucks, my friend Jason Odom. How are you doing, Jason?
I'm doing fantastic with that sort of introduction.
Well, you obviously had a great career here, and it must have been something as a freshman to get put in there. You and Reggie Green both at the tackles and trying to protect Shane Matthews, and somehow you guys were just good enough to get into the SEC championship game.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's hard to describe, and I certainly didn't realize the magnitude as an 18 or 19-year-old that, you know, 2 freshman tackles. I can't imagine what it was like to be Shane Matthews, thinking that, oh my goodness, I got these guys to count on. But, you know, and we always weren't great. I don't want to make that assumption either, but you know, we ended up getting better, and you know, we started off that year rough and got better and better, and ended up in the SEC championship game that year, and had a chance to win it. Really did.
Really?
And
Yeah.
so that would have been 4 in a row for me. Could we have won that one?
Yeah, and because after that, 93, 94, 95, obviously you had some great teams and
Yeah.
were able to throw the ball a lot. I mean, how did you see your progression as you went from year to year on that?
Well, I felt like the freshman year was just a whirlwind. It was just so much different, so much longer, more intense, just the whole game. I felt like I really made some improvements my sophomore year, but then I kind of took a step back because my junior year I got switched to left tackle. My first years were at right tackle, which, you know, people may say that's not a huge thing, but when you're not used to it, it's a change. So, you know, kind of get adjusted my junior year. Had a pretty good junior year, and then I think I had my knee injury my junior year too. But you know, it just I feel like we continue to get better, continue to progress. And listen, I had a great cast of guys around me. I mean, we had a pretty dang good O-line for most of the time after that, with Donnie Young and Jeff Mitchell, Jim Watson, Mo Collins, who's rest in peace. He's deceased now, but you know, a bunch of good guys that came in there and played during that time.
It was pretty amazing, that run, and you had a bunch of Jacobs Award winners. I believe you were one, right?
Yeah, I actually won it in 94 and 95, so I got it twice. So
what do you get for that? I think I asked Donnie Young once. He said, I didn't get anything. He said, you won the Jacobs Award. That's it.
Well, it was called the Jacobs Trophy when I won it, and I asked one of our, you know, administrative guys. I'm like, hey, where's the trophy? He's like, they don't give a trophy.
False advertising.
So the best lineman in the SEC doesn't get a trophy when it's called a trophy?
Yeah, that's right. Now you get a trophy for anything. Special, you know, you can be a great punter and you get a Ray Guy trophy.
Oh yeah. You know, it's not a big deal. Really, I'm one of those guys that's anti-trophy anyway. So, I mean, unless you're winning the Heisman or the national championship, and maybe the SEC championship, that's kind of cool. But I'm not big on you know making everybody feel good.
Yeah, that's right. Well, obviously, after that freshman year, you guys got to the SEC championship game. Things in '93 weren't clicking that well. What was it like in that season when that Kentucky game was going on, and you got two quarterbacks throwing 7 picks in the game? Yeah,
that was weird, and I see that at least the end of that game a lot on clips. It was surreal for us, but you know what? That year with, you know, rotating quarterbacks, as good as that sounds as an offense, it always feels kind of weird even when things are going good and you got different faces in the huddle, you know, every other drive. You know, I remember, just on a personal note, I jumped off sides more time that year than I had ever because cadences change a little bit. Yeah. Just inflection changes a little bit. So just from that standpoint, and listen, I'm not questioning Coach Spurrier. He's a genius when it comes to coaching and offense. Just it was difficult, and that game was one of the ones where, you know, keep throwing another guy in there, bring another guy back when one throws a pick. So, but we had the right guy in there at the end of the game, and you know, Danny made the throw to Chris, and we've all seen that clip 100 times. But I do remember, Pat, that the play before, I guess the play before that, we ran something similar, and Danny thought it would be open, and in the huddle before that play, he said, guys, if you give me enough time, this is a touchdown. And he just gave us that confidence that we're going to score on this play. And we gave him good protection, and he made it happen.
Yeah, unbelievable. And I know I've seen it a billion times. I think I'm still behind Chris Doring in watching it the most.
I can imagine that.
Well, it was great, though. I mean, of course, in '94, you guys had Terry Dean, and you were number one in the country. And then obviously the Auburn game happened, and Danny took over from that. From that point on, Danny went on to wonderful things and did a great job at being the quarterback for the Florida Gators. But the '95 season, that was just it's amazing. That's one of the best teams Florida's ever had, and it still wasn't the best team in the country by I hate to say this, by a long shot.
Yeah, I still remember. I remember a few parts of the game, but I remember after the game for months still hearing the people jab me saying, "Hey, did you hear Nebraska just scored again?" I'm like, "What are you talking about, dude?" But no, I don't know that they were that much better. I think that we were. That whole week was kind of weird. So Coach Spurrier was mad at most of the events that we went to because we showed up on time to everything, and Nebraska was always a half hour, 45 minutes, an hour late, and they would show up, the event would be done, and then they would leave. And so I'm hoping I'm not misremembering this, but my memory fails me sometimes. But I want to say that even before that game actually was played, he was he actually mentioned that part aggravated him throughout the week, and how this will never happen again. And so we were just, I don't know if we were, I won't say we were ill prepared football wise, but just a lot of things happened that week that just didn't go right. And obviously the game continued that way too.
Yeah, I've heard stories about some other things, but we won't get into some of those things that happened. But
there may have been a shouting match between me and my head coach during that game, in which I was certain I was right, and when I went back to the film, I was wrong.
Well, that's perfect because, and I'm sure you get reminded of that every once in a while, like at reunions. Hey, Jason, remember when you jumped offside?
Yeah, he never brings that up. He's a pleasure to be around. Him and Jerry are still, hug you and at our last reunion we didn't get to have one this year, but this past year, but because of COVID, but the past few SEC championship reunions, it's been great to be around him.
It has been tough, though. Obviously, your son comes up here to be a tight end at Florida, and with what he's had to deal with, what all these kids have had to deal with, it's a miracle in a way that we got a season in. But how tough was that for your son, Jonathan?
It was probably the toughest year of his life. Not many people know or even care at this point because he hasn't done anything in college, but he came off of shoulder surgery, and then as soon as he got cleared to actually work out, the gyms shut down.
Yeah.
And so he went up there probably weaker, lighter, and more unprepared than he could have ever been. He was probably, I don't know if he could have done 5 push-ups when he stepped foot on that campus as an actual student, because he couldn't rehab his shoulder properly, and so he was way behind the 8 ball, which started kind of a domino effect of just emotions. He's quarantined, basically, the whole football team. They try to keep him quarantined this year. No interaction on campus, no typical freshman, life. And so all that culminated in just a year where I think he struggled physically, mentally, and emotionally. But I just talked to him this morning. He had a meeting with Coach Mullen, and it went good, and he still loves being a Gator, and he's got some work ahead of him, but I think he's finally ready to compete, and we'll see what he's able to do more so this spring.
Well, that's the thing, Jason. I think he and a lot of people really want to see a spring football, not the game, but the practices, because obviously that didn't happen. It's hard to make those strides when you're not able to do that.
Yeah, and what you don't realize, and I didn't even, in retrospect, I realized how much of an impact it made, is that due to contact tracing, he was quarantined, I think, Pat, 3 times when he didn't have COVID because he was in close contact. So even in workouts when he got there, I think he was quarantined for 2 different weeks in a hotel because he had close contact with someone that had it on the team. And so that just further inhibited the progress they made. So I think, he needs to practice, and I'm sure all of them do. just to try to get better and have some development in their life football wise, and some normalcy to their lives. So
Sure.
I'm not going to get into the political side of that. I just know that there's a mental health side to the COVID quarantine, that it's a very real virus. I just talked to a very close attorney friend of mine who was just in the hospital for like 2 weeks with it. A good friend of mine, another one had double pneumonia. So I mean, it's a real deal. I just hope that we can get through it safely and quickly, where all these kids can have a good college experience all the way around.
Right, because I know you would like to see him have the experience you had in your 4 years at Florida.
Yeah, mine couldn't have been better. I mean, set aside, I started as a freshman. I mean, I know that's kind of irregularly, but I met my wife at Florida. I met, one of the dearest friends of my life, who was my roommate, Danny Werfel. I mean, all these relationships I still have. Shane Edge, I talked to him a whole bunch. I try to see him. He's still in Lake City, but all these guys are huge parts of my life, and I don't think those relationships get cemented as well when you're always apart from each other.
Now, meanwhile, when you had a great career with the Bucks, and are you excited about what's going on here? Have you continued to be a Bucks fan?
I do. I don't watch a whole lot of pro football anymore. I will watch the Bucks games, and I root for them, and hope they do well. And but I don't lose any sleep anymore when we don't win or lose. Those days are over, where I can relax if I'm mad for about 5 minutes after the game, and then I'm on with other things. So,
what was the hardest transition for you going from college, where you obviously were a dominant player, to the NFL?
You hear a lot about speed of the game transferring from high school to college, and then it does it again when you go to college, from college to the pros. And there's a whole nother element about going to the pro level. Is kind of the mental toughness side. It's your job. How much time are you going to put into your craft? Thank goodness I had a great guy that I got to learn from when I got to Tampa, a guy named Paul Gruber, who's in the Ring of Honor.
Right.
I don't know if he'll ever make the Hall of Fame, but I mean, that caliber of player. And he got there early, and when we got released every day, I don't know, 4 or 5 o'clock, he wasn't going home. And so I very early on, I walked by the meeting room after, people were leaving the building for the day, and he's in the offensive line meeting room watching film. And that wasn't something I did in college. I wish I did, because it made me a much better player in the pros, is how much I learned to study the game, study my opponent's tendencies, those type things. So I had a consummate professional to kind of, mirror my game after, who was the left tackle at the time. And when I started playing at right tackle, I was trying to mimic what he did every play. Great balance, great head, great demeanor, great work ethic, even down to what he ate. So the mental side, mental toughness. There was a story about a guy that was at Tampa before I was. I won't mention his name, but he's having
you can go ahead and mention his name.
Probably wouldn't know him anyways. He never was a true starter, but he got a chance to play. I think it was in a preseason game, and he was blocking a fiend. Back then we were in a division where it seemed like there was an all-pro on every divisional opponent we had. And he came in the locker room at halftime, and he's like yelling, "I can't block this guy." And you can't have that attitude and be successful at that level. Right. You got to think you can block everybody. Which, I had, I don't know, probably 6 games against the best defensive end that ever suited up and put on cleats, and Reggie White. And so my attitude was, hey man, compete every snap. There's nobody's going to beat me. Obviously, it happens sometimes, but I was just uber competitive, and I hated to lose. And I certainly wasn't the most strongest. I probably was quicker than most, but I wasn't the most strongest guy. But I just made up for it, and kind of tenacity and the will to win.
Yeah, I mean, and then afterwards you went into law enforcement, right?
Yeah. So I had to retire basically in the first year of a new contract because of my back. which still to this day is just not good. But there was a period of time, I retired in February of '01, and so there was a period of time where I didn't do anything because I couldn't. My back was just a wreck. I lost a bunch of weight, and I was still young enough where I felt like I needed to do something kind of productive and kind of for my community. And so I went into law enforcement in 2007, and I was with the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office until 2014 or 15, where my back just got so bad that I couldn't even do a desk job. I had been moved to a desk job at that point, basically, and I couldn't even sit at a desk for very long. So it's doing this interview with you is the longest I'll sit today because it wrecks my back. So I didn't figure you would appreciate me laying in my bed doing this, though.
Hey, it would have been a first. It would have been like Hugh Freeze at that game.
Yeah.
We'll end on this, and we have a Facebook Live question because this is going out live. Frank wants to know how long you would have been able to play if your back had held up.
Well, I just signed a 3-year deal that year to be the left tackle, and it was kind of the first big money I'd seen because I got drafted in the 4th round. But I had to make it through that season because I just came off back surgery the previous year, and so I think I could have played, barring any other injuries, I could have played 10 years in the league. I mean, I kind of cemented that I was the real deal at that level. I think I started over the 5 years. I started 47, 48 games. So, and they had drafted a guy to replace me, and he couldn't beat me out. So. I think I would have played, probably as long as my body would let me because, other things started hurting as I got older, not just my back.
Well, I'm there, but I am much older than you, so I got pretty much everything that hurts. But
hey, I will say I'm in the middle of a move, and I was going through some memorabilia, and one of the things I cracked open, the first thing I saw was your face on there. And it was an article from '95 about how we may struggle in the Fiesta Bowl.
Well, it was right.
Well, yes, you were. I didn't have the heart to read it. I just saw
I remember when on media day when you guys came out first, and it was in that stadium, and we interviewed all these guys, and then Nebraska came out, and Robbie and I looked at each other and said, "Stampede." They just looked so big and strong. Yeah. And they had all their weights there and everything.
Oh yeah, crazy. Oh yeah. You were right on the money as far as that goes.
It's not very often that I was, but it was easy because I used to pick Florida every game, and you guys won almost every game. So
yeah, especially that year. That year we won all of them except that one.
Yep. Hey Jason, it's always great talking to you. I look forward to a time when we can sit down at dinner together, maybe this football season, and talk about things and all the great times we have. This was the era when the media boys and the media and the players really got along well and still have relationships to this day. And
yeah, absolutely. And I don't answer my phone for everybody. When I see Pat Dooley comes up, I answer it every time. So that proves the point that you're trying to make there, is that there was a solid relationship built and some trust there. And so I appreciate all my experiences, including that one from that era.
I appreciate you, buddy, and thanks for coming on. We appreciate it so much. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you, Pat.
All right, Jason Odom, former Gator great, 2-time Jacobs Trophy winner, although there was no trophy, and also, of course, a great player for the Tampa Bay Bucks, and now his son playing for him. All right, I appreciate it. Let's go. It's time for 3 Things, sponsored by Trey Tucker, Executive Coaching, helping you go from good to great, which I think a lot of people want to do. Number 1 on 3 Things today, I'm curious with the NCAA tournament, because we've gotten a lot of the word about it, whether we're going to see a situation where teams are not going to feel comfortable, playing in the tournament, where they're going to say, look, we just don't want to send our guys there. We don't want to, especially if you're like a borderline team, you could see some lower seeds drop out. I think I have the answer, an answer, let's put it that way, for how to do the tournament this year, and that is, look, take the 30 teams the committee believes belong in there, and then let the rest of them play in their conference tournaments, and the winner gets to go, because that way you would be in a situation where you would not have to have all these teams like in the SEC. There, in theory, there are going to be 14 teams in Nashville, and that is that's a town where you've got bachelorette parties and everything. I'm curious whether you may have, if you're a team that was 2 and whatever, in the conference, you might say, yeah, we're good. We're good. We're done with this season. We're finished with it. So it's going to be an interesting dynamic as we go forward with that. Number 2 on 3 things, and again, thank you so much to Trey Tucker for sponsoring this. Notre Dame got put on probation, and I read up on why they did, and a lot of it was, one of the issues was that a player came up to Brian Kelly and asked to get his picture taken. He was a recruit. And he said, I can't do a selfie with you. I'm not allowed to. Sorry. In fact, that same player was the same, I think it was the same guy that Dan Mullen got in trouble for. So Brian Kelly did the right thing. Player came back, said, oh, come on, coach, you got to do this for me. And Brian Kelly took a selfie. So now, guess what? They get on probation. That's one of the violations. This is a thing. When you hear those words, probation, it's almost not fair. Florida went through this. They were minor things. Tennessee, money in a McDonald's bag is a whole different story. But different teams have different, and everybody lumps them together. Oh, they were on probation. They had this, they had that. But it's not all the same. I don't think Notre Dame did anything that bad. It does kind of show you the idiocy of some of the NCAA rules, but it's been that way forever. There have been idiots. Remember, there was a deal you could not have cream cheese with your bagel at breakfast because that would be an NCAA violation. That really happened. Finally, on 3 things, I want to say to 2 people that I know a little bit. I know one of them very well. Greg Madison decided to retire. Greg Madison, when he was here with Urban Meyer's first year, remember it was he and Charlie Strong were co-coordinators. Couldn't have been a nicer guy. I loved talking to him and just sitting down and talking to him. When he went on to the NFL, I remember I covered one of their games, the Ravens games, and we talked again. Just a great guy. Good to see that he's probably doing what he wants to do. And also to Tommy Townsend, today was named to the Pro Football Writers all NFL team. So we got a Gator on there, and great for Tommy to do that. So that's great to hear. All right, we are going to take a quick break. When we come back, Rece Davis is going to join us. We'll talk to him about both football and basketball because, as you know, he does everything. And we appreciate him for coming on. We'll be right back right after this break on Another Dooley Noted Podcast. Thanks so much to our title sponsors, ABC Fine Wine and Spirits and Titan MRI, and to our pick sponsor, Leonardo's of Millhopper. You can find us live on Facebook and YouTube or listen at your leisure on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or wherever you find all your favorite podcasts. I'm excited to continue this podcast and to have your company on board as a sponsor. If you're interested in being part of the show, email me at patrickdooley54@gmail.com or give me a call, 352-317-3444. You may be like the Florida football team and you want to move from good to great. I can tell you how to do that with the help of a Gator graduate. His name is Trey Tucker, and he's an executive coach and licensed therapist who can give you the kind of guidance that will unlock your potential. With one-on-one online sessions, he'll develop your communication skills, find your purpose, and identify your strengths. Take a step in the right direction with Trey Tucker by reaching him at 423-799-0769 or trey@tuckerexecutivecoaching.com. Executive coaching from a licensed therapist with more than a decade of corporate experience and someone who knows the fight song, what's not to like? And tell them Pat Dooley sent you. All right, welcome back to Another Dooley Noted Podcast. Appreciate everybody for clicking on and watching it, whether you're watching it live or whether maybe you're listening to it on your way to watch the Gators play this Saturday. Although, if you're going all the way to Athens, it's news to me. All right, right now it's a great honor to bring on Rece Davis. You guys know him well from College Game Day, from obviously the basketball now, and I mean, you just go from one to another without messing around. You know, football's over, let's go basketball.
It's a quick turnaround, Pat, as you know, and you've done it for years. And I think sometimes people make it to be a bigger thing than it is. But there is a period of time where you have to make sure that your brain engages the proper way, and that when you think about Florida, that the coach's name that comes to mind is Mike White, not Dan Mullen, you know, that kind of thing. You know, that you sort of your instantaneous response, and just, you know, little things like, you know, making sure that you're plugged in on people who've been hurt, and this year who's coming off pause and all of that kind of thing too has been a little bit challenging.
Well, Rece, I mean, when you think about that we got through this football season, it wasn't perfect, obviously. The number of games played, what are you going to do about it? You know, teams having to take 2 weeks off at a time. Do you sometimes have to sit back and go, I cannot believe that happened?
You know what, Pat? It's kind of, I was always optimistic that that the season would be completed in college football. I am a little, to be honest, I'm a little surprised that the SEC did as high a percentage as it did. I can't remember now. They missed 2 games or something like that, 2 or 3 games, not many. It was not very many anyway. That was pretty remarkable to me. I always felt like that the conclusion would be reached, but I thought the SEC and Greg Sankey did a remarkable job. And I know in your area it's okay to praise the SEC. Other places dislike it, but I thought they did. I thought he did a very wise approach to it. And in talking to him in the time leading up to it, he was pretty steadfast and saying, look, this is not going to go perfectly. Just because we've created this time doesn't mean that we won't have any cancellations, that we won't have, teams with issues. We're going to. He goes, it's a pandemic. So I think what happens is that once you start, that people think, well, they must have it figured out. There aren't going to be any postponements or cancellations, and there's just no way to prevent that. So I thought they did a really wise job in football. And I will admit, and I know that, there are far more positive tests that have been popping up of late, and, a bit of a resurgence as we wait for, the variety of factors to try to hopefully plateau and diminish this entire scourge. But I have been a little surprised, I think, based on the success that football season experienced for the most part. I've been a little surprised at the number of basketball teams that have had to go on such long breaks. I guess that's attributable, though, to fewer people in closer quarters. And once you start, contact tracing, then when you can get away with taking out, 5-7 guys in football, but you can't get away with that in basketball. I guess that's something I hadn't really considered until I stopped and thought, why is this happening so much now when so many protective measures are being taken? And I think it's just simply because of sheer math. There are fewer people, and if you have 3 or 4 guys test positive, then it's going to have a greater impact for a longer period of time.
Yeah, I mean, going back to College Game Day, which everybody watches, of course, and is when it was almost like we didn't know where you guys were going. I don't know if you guys knew where you were going a lot of the time, and then you didn't know what the set was going to be. You knew the coach would be down at his home, and there's another miracle. You guys were able to pull off a full season of that.
Our crew was remarkable, and our leadership was terrific in allowing us to attempt it. Now, there were some, I don't think I'm speaking out of school here. There were some logistical things because early on we talked about doing the show in studio. Now, that's not within the character or the DNA of the show, and it was not preferable, but we were looking at it. And then came the realization that traveling our analysts and our people who knew how to do the show into Bristol was an issue as well. Right. and no lesser of an issue, and in some ways perhaps a greater one than just getting people on site. So we were able to do it. Our crew was great. We had we had people miss. We had our longtime stage manager, Mike Ruhlman, who missed a couple of shows. He did not get sick, thankfully, but he was contact traced a couple of times. He missed a show, I think, at Penn State, and then much to his chagrin, he missed the national championship. But we've got a deep roster, and people were able to step in. And I tip my hat to them because they really they had a lot of personal sacrifices that they made to try to be able to show up and do their jobs, whether it was the audio guys or whether guys who were building a set or driving the trucks. It was a remarkable undertaking, and I'm extraordinarily grateful for what they gave up in terms of trying to make sure that they were able to work, and the show means something to them, and that's very gratifying for all of us.
And of course, as we started this season, we told everybody, because of the COVID, because of the purse strings being pulled real tight, no coaches will be fired this year. They all get a pass. So we were dead on right with that.
I can't believe how wrong I was about that, Pat. And I just felt like I knew people would be unhappy, and it might shorten the leash, so to speak, on coaches who might have been in a little bit of trouble. But the sheer number of guys who are paid to go away and not coach anymore, the most astonishing to me. Now, the Tennessee fiasco is almost in a class by itself, but the most astonishing to me was Auburn. I have reason to believe, I'm not sure that everyone at Auburn wanted to make that move, but right. It became a situation where they did, and they paid Gus $21 million to go away, and they have for a long time, and I'm not saying exclusively, and I'm not casting aspersions at them, but they have largely, historically, measured their success about how well do you do against Alabama. Well, nobody's doing very well against Alabama right now, but they've done better than almost everybody else. Perhaps, maybe even save Clemson, who's, fought Alabama basically to 500 over their meetings. But, I think if you go back historically, I think that 2017 Alabama-Auburn game, we were there for game day, Pat. And there were a lot of rumblings from insiders that, if Alabama wins this game, it's just going to be a nice little mutual parting of the ways. And, I think the speculation at the time was that Gus might go ahead and get a fresh set of downs at Arkansas and Auburn would start over. But instead, Auburn won the game. And when they did, contract extension, they went to the SEC championship game where they, ultimately lost to Georgia. And then, I think maybe sort of rubbing salt in the wound, Alabama ended up winning the national championship anyway, that year. So, there are a lot of things I think that it's just one of those things that the relationship was better than the people who didn't like it thought that it was, and at least in terms of being successful, it was more successful, I should say, than people thought it was. But it had just come time for a change in many people's eyes. So that's what they did. But that was the one that surprised me the most. The Tennessee thing belongs in a class by itself, and and I guess South Carolina surprised me a little. But I just didn't think that people would pay as much money for guys to go away. Texas, it's been a little bit surprising.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. I mean, we didn't have SEC Media Days last year, but if we have it this year, there'll be 4 guys that we thought were going to be there that won't be there. But, Rece, I think after, or as the playoffs are going on, but even at the end of it, there was a lot of discussion, a lot of people asking, how do we fix college football in terms of the same teams going there? And everybody's simple answer is expand the playoff. If you expand the playoff, you'll let more teams in. There are a lot of people who say, well, that's going to do is give us some bad games. We're getting bad games now. I don't know that there's an answer to solve the problem that may or may not be a problem.
It's not that simple, Pat. I think you and I agree on that. It's I understand the people who say that it generates interest in getting more teams into the field. It'll keep their attention longer. I mean, I understand all of those arguments, but I wish I had the number in front of me right now because I counted it up during the playoffs. So there have been 7 years of the playoff, and that would be
28 teams.
28 semifinal games, I think, or something like that. 7 years of playoffs. You got 14 semifinal games. So I think that there's only like 3 or 4 or something like that were single digits. I mean, I think
the average margin's 20 points. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, Alabama, Ohio State, the first year was single digits. Clemson, Ohio State, the year that Clemson won by 6 was single digits. There were a couple of others that are escaping me off the top of my head right now, but they're few and far between. So the idea that we're going to get better games and it's going to be better for the sport, I think, is not complete. It could be, and it could help parts of it. It could help generate interest of who you're going to get in the playoff. But then there's also the flip side to this. Taking out the Tua Tagovailoa injury, think about the atmosphere of that 2019 LSU-Alabama game. That felt like and ended up being an elimination game. Now, Tua got hurt, and then Auburn ended up upsetting Alabama, early in the Mac Jones era, so maybe that changed things. But if you have an 18 playoff, Alabama wasn't eliminated after losing by 5 to LSU. So you've got to take those things into consideration as well. And you also have to take into consideration, I hear people say, well, you go to 8, you go the automatic bid route. Well, then you have to take away the divisions, because you can't have, I shouldn't say can't, you should not have a situation where, go back a couple of years, you had teams like Northwestern with 3 non-conference losses that year. I'm not speaking of this year. A couple of years ago, 3 non-conference losses in the championship game. You had Virginia Tech that lost 3 or 4 games, championship game. A couple of years before that, you had Pittsburgh with like 4 or 5 losses in the championship game because they won the division. What if they pull an upset and get an automatic bid? Well, people say, well, that's great. We get that in basketball. This is a smaller tournament, and we need to reward the regular season. So if you are going to do anything like automatic bids, well, the first thing you have to do, you've got 2 choices. You either eliminate the conference championship games and expand your regular season schedule so you play more conference games and get closer to I won't say true champion, I'll say a thorough champion. Or if you're going to stick with your conference championship games, and the money leads me to believe that they want to, you've got to eliminate divisions and just have the top 2 teams play to try to protect some of the integrity, so you don't have the weaker division champion pulling a major upset and somehow stealing a playoff bid when they don't deserve to be there.
Switching over to basketball, see, I can do it too, just as quickly as you. We're sitting here and every week we wonder who's going to play, who's not going to play, much as we did with football. But as you said earlier, it's a lot tougher. What is your thought about, there are people saying we need to not have the conference tournaments. We just don't need to get that many teams in one location and play these off. But then you take away a lot of the luster of what March Madness is, because it starts with the conference tournaments.
I'll be really honest with you. I hadn't thought about this at all until yesterday. And I was talking with someone who said that, there are coaches who are going to be firmly into the field who are looking at it like not in a way where they're avoiding competition, but they're trying to avoid, the catastrophic situation of testing positive and messing up their NCAA tournament chances. Right. So I think it's still in the early ruminating stages among coaches of teams in that situation. But it's something that they are thinking about for their individual teams. At least some of them are. I haven't thought about it thoroughly enough. My knee-jerk reaction is, well, you really shouldn't do that. But when you stop and think about it a little more thoroughly and what's at risk and what can be gained and what can be lost, there's some validity to those concerns. I'll put it that way. So I'm not trying to straddle the fence on you. I haven't come to a definitive conclusion, Pat, in my own mind as to whether I would support that or not. My initial reaction was like, why would they do that? And then thinking about it a little more, I was like, oh yeah, that could be awful. You could have I'm not trying to jinx anybody, but let's take a team like Baylor. That Baylor and Gonzaga have separated themselves. They are better than everyone else in the country. What happens if Baylor, goes to the conference tournament and then right after the conference tournament, which maybe even they win, they have an issue with the virus? That's I know it could happen anywhere. I understand that, but I think it becomes a question of what's undue risk given what you've already accomplished. Before
I let you go, Rece, I got to know what the jerseys are behind you. Which I'm curious which one you cared about to get up there. I see Mark Mays, I think, up there.
I'm not much of a collector, Pat, but what I do like to do is get jerseys from guys I've worked with. And Mark is one of my closest friends, and Jay Billis and I have been close for a number of years. I also, as you go around here, have a Desmond Howard up there.
That's sweet.
I've got in my basement, I've got a Rod Gilmore and a Hubert Davis. But this is my favorite one. That's my son's high school baseball jersey from the Avon Old Farm School for Boys. I'm awaiting the arrival of his Princeton jersey, and then after he's a grad transfer at Duke, so after we get the Duke jersey, we'll put that up there too. And then my daughter's in theater, so that's a picture of her in the theater. They don't wear jerseys in theaters, but I'm not really
in damn Yankees.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm not really a collector, but I like to get the jerseys of guys I worked with, and they've been very generous to give them to me. Except you notice there's no Herb Street, there's no Pollock. Pollock told me at one point. Pollock said, "Yeah, buy one of my jerseys, and I'll sign it for you." And I'm like, "That's not the point." I said, "I'm not spending money on a 47 Georgia jersey. Give me one of yours." So.
And I'm not surprised Herbstreit hadn't given you one either. He's got so many jerseys up in his house, he can't afford to get rid of any.
Yeah, I know. You'd think you'd be able to spare one of them. Something yes. I would even take. I'd really like from Herbstreit. Now I'm a college guy, so I'd certainly prefer the Ohio State jersey. But if he came up with the Centerville Elks jersey that he wore when he was, that dude. People forget he was a big time recruit. I'd take that. That'd be cool too. So.
Hey, Rece, thanks so much. It's always great talking to you, buddy. And good luck with everything going forward with this. And hopefully we'll get to a point where you and I could be in the same place, the same arena, talking to each other.
That would be great, Pat. Always great talking to you, man. And congratulations on your wonderful career. And I hope things keep going great for you.
Thanks, buddy. Rece Davis from ESPN joining us. We appreciate his time here on Another Dooley Noted Podcast. We'll take a break. When we come back, the Leonardo's Millhopper Quick Picks are coming up, as well as our new segment with a new sponsor. All that and more here on Another Dooley Noted Podcast.
Titan MRI, North Central Florida's premier independent diagnostic testing MRI facility. At Titan MRI, we're focused on you, the patient, having a great customer experience. Our MRI equipment is modern and 75% quieter than any unit in its class. And our MRI unit has one of the largest openings of any of the newer high-strength MRI units, which allows comfortable scanning for potential claustrophobic and larger patients. At Titan MRI, we look forward to serving you.
Thanks so much to our title sponsors, ABC Fine Wine and Spirits and Titan MRI, and to our pick sponsor, Leonardo's of Millhopper. You can find us live on Facebook and YouTube, or listen at your leisure on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or wherever you find all your favorite podcasts. I'm excited to continue this podcast and to have your company on board as a sponsor. If you're interested in being part of the show, email me at patrickdooley54@gmail.com or give me a call, 352-317-3444. All right, welcome back to Another Dooley Noted Podcast. It's time for us to do our Leonardo's Millhopper Quick Picks, and of course we did the first one for the new contest. We already had a winner for the old contest, or it's not an old contest, but it was the other contest. Of the people that got into this last segment of it on Monday, Bob Julian, Andrew Helmick, and Tim Boline were the three guys who qualified. You guys were terrible on these picks. Many of you went 0-4. It was not good. In fact, I think all the guys who qualified had two right. Andrew was the only guy who picked Florida to beat Tennessee out of all the people who got in the contest. Oh, ye of little faith. This week's Leonardo's Quick Picks, and I want to thank Kyle Cohen. He and I played golf yesterday. It was great to see him again. And, I went in there Tuesday for their Parmesan sub. Oh man, just killed. That was a great way to have lunch. All right, so let's go with Leonardo's Millhopper's Quick Picks. Tampa Bay getting 3.5 at Green Bay. Okay? You got a hook there, so you never know. Buffalo is getting 3 at Kansas City. And then I want for the third one, the total points scored in both the games. The over-under there is 104.5. Sounds like a radio station. 104.5, so you want to go over or under all the points that are scored there. And then finally, as we always do, for Florida versus Georgia. Now, I don't know what's going to happen in this game. I mean, did anybody else see that coming? What happened Tuesday night? Did anybody see what happened against Kentucky coming? So I don't know what's going to happen with Florida and Georgia. This team, Georgia just beat Kentucky. Kentucky played like crap in the game, to be honest with you, and still should have won the game and blew it at the end. It's kind of an amazing thing to watch this Kentucky team. They're 4-9 right now. In fact, I think they're like 97th in the net rankings, which is what they use for the obviously the NCAA tournament. Georgia's actually like 95. So I wrote this in my front 9 column on WRUF. Look, guys, you know one of my rules: win by 1. I don't care if you win by 1 point. If you just got to win the game and find a way to win the game. You can't. If you lose it, it's really gonna hurt. Winning, it's not gonna help you that much, even though it is a road win and you add a road win to that resume. So that'll be a big game. I'm looking forward to it because I'm going to go over to St. Augustine and watch it with my dad. And again, thanks so much to Kyle at Leonardo's Millhopper, who hits the ball longer than I do, which pretty much doesn't eliminate him from being – I mean, there's like 8 people that don't. And I think 4 of them have had double hernia surgeries because I don't hit it very far anymore. All right, I'm really happy about this. We are bringing on a new sponsor, and he's a great friend of mine. Adam's Rib Company. They're Adam Brewer, who does an amazing job. I love that place, and obviously both of them. We may have a little news for you next week, in fact, involving Adams. But we do have news this week, is they are going to start sponsoring our Gator of the Week, and we will do that on Fridays, and then on Mondays we'll do the Gator of the Weekend. So we'll just announce who we think it is. And the great thing, the one reason, or not the one reason, but many reasons. I have many reasons for being excited about it. But one reason I'm excited about it is that we're getting ready to go into a situation where everybody's going to be playing, because volleyball is going to be back, soccer is going to be back. Obviously, even you have some spring football, and you got everything else going on. Everybody's going to be playing. I mean, we never know how things are going to go with COVID, but hopefully it gets better at some point, and we'll have many great athletes to choose from on our Gator of the Week and our Gator of the Weekend, sponsored by Adam's Rib Company. All right, here we go. This week's Gator of the Week, I thought about this long and hard. I went with Tyree Appleby because I think he's really given this team a boost. In his 2 games this week, 33 points, 6 rebounds, 9 assists. That's the kind of point guard play they need. Not only that, but he passed 1,000 points all time in scoring. So that Tyree Appleby is our first Gator of the Week, and we'll see who it ends up being with Saturday's game. And not only that, we have Friday gymnastics. They're at Arkansas. Baseball's getting ready to start. They finally announced the schedule. We have all that. There's just a lot going on. And of course, the playoffs are going on this week. Playoffs. Florida actually named, or not. I don't think they named. I don't think this is official. Jules and I'll get this name wrong. Montanar is a new defensive coach. He was at USF. He kind of comes from the Saban tree, but not very long. He was a grad assistant there. It's an interesting hire. And we'll see. It appears that they have their staff set now, but who knows? In fact, we may get Robbie on next week to kind of talk about the new staff and what Florida needs to do in football. Playoffs this weekend, I'm excited about them. Here's my pick, because I didn't make one anywhere else. So this is my official pick. I'm taking the Packers, and I'm taking the Bills. I think Packers-Bills is going to be our Super Bowl. The ratings may not be good. They're probably not going to be good anyway, because everybody's ratings are down because of all the things that everything's going on in this country, obviously. But Packers, Bills, and I tell you what, I'm probably wrong about the Packers. I like the Packers. The Bucs obviously have a great team. I'm betting against Brady. The only reason, this will be their 3rd straight road game. You would think that run has to end. But I have no idea what's going to happen in this game. But I'm picking. In fact, last week I went 3-1. How about that? I was pretty good last week. All right, so We covered everything. We didn't get into Danny White very much. Maybe we'll talk a little bit more about him later. The news. Oh, by the way, the news on Florida basketball. Mike White's had a Zoom conference with the media boys today, and girls, and women, and ladies, and men, and old men. Castleton still not 100%. The game time decision on him with that ankle, and Scotty Lewis is also got to go through all the protocols. But it sounds like they may get both of them back, and there are probably some of you going, I don't want them back. Look how good we played without them. And they need them, believe me, and they need them for a lot of reasons, both those guys. All right, that's going to do it for another Dooley Noted podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. We still have a couple of sponsorships open. If you want to get involved, you can call me, 352-317-3444, anytime before 11 p.m. That's usually when I go Betty by, unless there's a game on. You know how that works out. Be sure to call me if you want to get involved in a sponsorship. Also, you can watch this every Monday and Friday on Facebook Live and YouTube Live, and of course listen to it on 39. There's 39 different platforms. Make sure you remember to like and follow and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And I've seen a lot of you liking it on Facebook because I usually go on there late at night and kind of watch some old music, like usually concerts or something. I saw a great one the other day. I think it was Tom Petty on the old. What was that show the Wolfman Jack did? I can't even remember the name of it, but it was good anyway. All right, I think I've got enough. Thank you so much to Jason Odom. Thank you for Rece Davis. Thank you so much. We'll have new guests next week. Going to start working on those as soon as I get off here today. All right, and until next time, I am Pat Dooley. I'm deep, I'm way back, and I am out of here.